Hello, guys. Greetings to you all, and once more, welcome to the Microsoft project training session. Today, we'll be looking at a brief summary of what we did in the last training session on Saturday. Now, before we go ahead, I'd like to introduce myself once more. My name is Neba Charles Loanga, and I am a project management expert, Microsoft Office X project expert, and I'm an advanced Kaizen consultant. Now, like I said, in the last session, a lot of people, maybe due to internet issues, were not able to attend the session. Reasons why with my team we decided to start create some of these short videos to send into the group so that members can actually our members can actually get familiarize themselves with how the interface works before we get into real live training sessions. Now, there are a lot of projects that people try to manage back here in Cameroon and in other parts of the world, and they're basically faced with a lot of problems managing this project. For example, in the areas of task overlapping, cost rising, team members confused, they don't know what to do, what next, how to do it, deadlines slipping away. These are one of the key problems that actually affects projects, and it actually creates what we call project creeps, where you start the project and it ends up failing. Now, this is the interface of Microsoft projects. The first thing we'll be doing is we'll be trying to look at what we'll be doing for this session. We'll be trying to look at what Microsoft project is all about and the first key aspects to understand before you start running Microsoft projects. Now, if you look at this interface, this is the Gantt chart interface. Up here, we call it the ribbon. And the ribbon in Microsoft projects, just like any other office, like the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, is made up of the tabs. And these are the tabs. You have the tax tab, the resource tab, the report, the project, the view, and the format. Now, each tab is made up of groups. What are the groups? The format, columns, bar styles, Gantt chart style, show, hide groups. And each group is made up of what? Commands. Like for example, under the tags tab, we have the clipboard command and the clipboard group. And the clipboard group is made up of the cut command, the copy command, and the format painter. So you can see that for all the other groups that are found. So below that, we have what we call the timeline. Now, what is the timeline? Timeline in Microsoft Project gives a project summary of how your project is going to start. Like you see here, start Tuesday, 24th February 2026, right up to finish Tuesday, 24th February 2026. Now, this simply implies that this is the summary of what we have today. And the reason why it's like this is because no major task have been keyed in to this interface. Now, next to that, below that, we directly have what we call the Gantt chart interface. This is the Gantt chart interface, and it's also divided into two, as you can see from this divided line. Now, we have on the left hand side, we have the entry area, and on the right hand side, we have the visualization area, which means for everything is entered from this area, we get the direct interpretation or visualization from this area. Now let's come up here, we see what we call the task mode. Now, what is a task mode? The task mode simply explains whether a task should be manually scheduled or auto scheduled. So if I click directly below here and I click on this drop down arrow, notice we have manually scheduled and auto scheduled. Now, if I select the manually scheduled, it simply implies that you're telling Microsoft project, please don't schedule or do any job for me. Just let me do it. I will do the calculations for the job. Just watch. Now, when you select the auto schedule, it means you're telling Microsoft project, please, I want you to do the functions, execute the functions while I just simply give the commands. So depending on whichever that you want, which you select, Microsoft Project will automatically relate to that. Now the second part of it that we have is the task name. Now what is a task name? Projects are divided into tasks, are broken down into tasks, like what we call the work breakdown structure. Projects are divided into tasks or activities. For that project to be executed, it must be divided into activities. Therefore, the task name simply is used to identify all the tasks that are found in a project. Now, the next part of it is what we have is the duration. Now, every task must have a duration. Now, for example, if we had, like we discussed during the session, we said we have, for example, the activity digging of foundation. The digging of foundation could be 10 days. So duration now stands for the how long it's going to take for that particular task. For example, digging of foundation to be completed. The next now is start. If that duration is supposed to be 10 days, when would that activity start? When would the activity finish? So you see that we have the task name, which is digging of foundation, the duration, which is 10 days, when it's supposed to start, probably maybe on the 24th of February 2026, and when it's going to end. Microsoft Project will do the calculations for you if you actually select the automatic, except you want to do it manually. Now, the next part of it is we have, if you see here, we have the predecessor. Now, what are predecessors? Predecessors, by definition, is derived from the word precede. Now, what is precede? By one word definition, I always define predecessors as what comes before. All activities that comes before another activity. For example, digging a foundation comes before concreting of the foundation. Therefore, digging a foundation precedes concreting of foundation. After that, you realize that anything that comes before must automatically have something that comes after. Now, what are those activities that comes after? The activities that comes after, we define them as what? Successors. Now, what are successors? Successor simply refers to all those activities that comes after. I always define the successors or the succeeding activities as after. So if we have a predecessor, therefore we should have a successor. Now let's come back to the example. The example we said digging of foundation was the first activity, pouring of foundation concrete was a second activity. Therefore, to be able to use these two key terminologies, predecessors and successors, to define those two activities, we have to do what? We have to identify which is a predecessor and which is a successor. Now, before we go ahead, we realize that the successor doesn't exist. It doesn't show on the time on this area. Now, what do? We need to create a successor, and to create a successor, we need to insert. Now, you right click and then you come down to insert colon. Now, you go to the keyboard and you type successor. Now, this is the successor found. Now we select and we create the successor. Now we have the predecessors and the successors. Now in between these two, let's go back now to the example. For the predecessors, we spoke about the digging of the foundation and the concreting of the foundation. You realize that the digging of the foundation precedes concreting of the foundation, and the concreting of foundation succeeds digging of the foundation. This is how the interpretation is done. So you must clearly understand what are predecessors and what are successors. Now, on the other hand, we now have what we call the resource names. What are resource names? The resource names are simply the resources that will be used to execute the project. In Microsoft projects, there are basically three types of resources that exist. We have the work, we have the materials, and we have the cost. We will look at these three key terminologies deep when we start developing the project. Now, on the right hand side here, we have what we call the visualization area. Now, this visualization area will give what? A reaction or a visual presentation of everything that is keyed in from the entry area of the Gantt chart. Now, if you look above here, we have there, you will see some words, some keywords like T, like TW, like let's take it from SSMTWTFSS. Now, these letters that you see up here, they represent the days of the week. And what are the days of the week? That is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, if you notice, the SS are grayed. Like if you look at the SS are grayed. Now, with this SS being grayed, it simply means that at this current juncture, Microsoft Project considers Saturdays and Sundays as known working days, which therefore means that if we are supposed to execute any project, Saturdays and Sundays will be known working days based on the current settings. Therefore, Microsoft Project will only be working for the 5 days like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays. Saturdays and Sundays will be public holidays or known working days. So that is the essence of this of the visualization area. Now down here we see a new task manually scheduled. It therefore means that if you look here at this level, Microsoft every activity that we will key in at the level of the task name, they will be manually scheduled, which simply means that Microsoft Project doesn't will not perform any execution. Like you will be the one to do the calculations and do the executions. So that is one key thing probably that we'll need to correct before we end this session. Now, like you said here, all these activities here are all manually scheduled, which means let's delete this. Let's delete these two key activities. Let's delete them. So we have had a summary of what the key interfaces of Microsoft projects are. In the next session, we'll now see now how we can actually convert from manually scheduled to auto scheduled. And on this other hand here, we see some icons. Now these icons represent, like if you hover on it, you see that we have the Gantt chart, we have the task usage, we have the team planner, and we have the resource sheet. Now these are different icons that will enable us to move from one sheet to another, easily move from one sheet to another. Maybe for example from the Gantt chart sheet right up to the resource sheet which we are currently in. So this is the first part of our training. Go through this, ask me questions. This video will be sent into the group. Please make sure you study these videos and ask questions, and the questions will be responded. From this now, we'll be preparing for the next video sessions that will be coming up. So thank you guys once more for taking your time to watch these videos, and see you guys in the next session. Bye bye guys.